Airlines Flight 370 is a missing international passenger flight. The aircraft carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members on board. The accident confirmed everyone aboard has been presumed dead. In July 2015, the wreckage was found in Madagascar after being washed up. The United States Federal Bureau of Investigation investigated to determine if terrorism was involved on case. 2 passengers, one from Austria and another one from Italy, were named on the manifest, but they were discovered not to have been on board. Their passports had been stolen. Malaysian authorities found identity of 2 other passengers to be false. No search found the plane in the Indian Ocean. The search ended in 2018. In March 2025, a new search was started, attempting to find the plane in a different area. On March 24th, 2014, officials with both Malaysia Airlines and the Malaysian government stated that while the aircraft's whereabouts were still not known, unparalleled analyses by the United Kingdom's Air Accidents Investigation Branch and UK's satellite company Inmarsat indicated that it crashed into the southern Indian Ocean. It was presumed by these officials that all 239 people aboard died. Flight 370 was a scheduled flight in the early morning of Saturday, March 8, 2014, from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, to Beijing, China. It was one of 2 daily flights operated by Malaysia Airlines from its hub at Kuala Lumpur International Airport to Beijing Capital International Airport. On board were 2 pilots, 10 cabin crew, and 227 passengers. The planned flight duration was 5 hours and 34 minutes. At 042, Flight 370 took off and was cleared by air traffic control to climb to flight level 180, approximately 18,000 feet. Voice analysis has determined that the first officer communicated with ATC while the flight was on ground, and that the captain communicated with ATC after departure. Shortly after departure, the flight was transferred from the airport's ATC to Lumpur Radar ATC. Over Peninsula Malaysia and adjacent waters is provided by the Kuala Lumpur Area Control Center. Lumpur Radar is the name of the frequency used for en-route air traffic. At 046, Lumpur Radar cleared Flight 370 to flight level 350. At 101, Flight 370's crew reported to Lumpur Radar that they had reached flight level 350. The aircraft's final transmission before its disappearance from radar was an automated position report sent using the aircraft communications addressing and reporting system protocol at 106. Among the data provided in this message was the total fuel remaining, 43,800 kilograms. The last verbal signal to air traffic control occurred at 1 hour 19 minutes and 30 seconds, when Captain acknowledged the transition from Lumpur Radar to next ACC. The crew was expected to signal ATC in Ho Chi Minh City as the aircraft passed into Vietnamese airspace, just north of the point where contact was lost. The captain of another aircraft attempted to contact the crew of Flight 370 shortly after 1:30, using the International Air Distress Frequency. To relay Vietnamese air traffic control's request of the crew to contact him. The captain said he was able to establish communication, but heard only mumbling and static. Calls made to Flight 370's cockpit at 2:39 and 7:13 were unanswered, but acknowledged by the aircraft satellite data unit. Data from the Malaysian military's primary radar show Flight 370 crossing the Strait of Malacca and Andaman Sea to where it was last detected by radar. At 1 hour 20 minutes and 31 seconds, Flight 370 was observed on radar at Kuala Lumpur. 5 seconds later, the Mode S symbol disappeared from radar screens. At 1 hour 21 minutes and 13 seconds, Flight 370 disappeared from the radar screen. At Kuala Lumpur ACC, the final transponder data indicated that the aircraft was flying at its assigned cruise altitude of flight level 350 and was traveling at 471 knots. There were few clouds around this point and no rain or lightning nearby. At the time that the transponder stopped functioning, the Malaysian military's primary radar showed Flight 370 turning right, but then beginning a left turn to a southwesterly direction. Countries were reluctant to release information collected from military radar because of sensitivity about revealing their capabilities. Indonesia has an early warning radar system, but its ATC radar did not register any aircraft with a transponder code used by Flight 370, despite the aircraft possibly having flown near or over the northern tip of Sumatra. Thailand and Vietnam also detected Flight 370 on radar before the transponder stopped working. The radar position symbols for the transponder code used by Flight 370 vanished after the transponder is thought to have been turned off. On March 7, 2016, more debris, possibly from the aircraft, was found on the island of Reunion. Aziz Kaprawi, Malaysia's deputy transport minister, said that an unidentified gray item with a blue border might be linked to Flight 370. Both Malaysian and Australian authorities, coordinating the search in the South Indian Ocean, sent teams to verify whether the debris was from the missing aircraft. On March 21, 2016, South African archaeologist Niels Kruger found a gray piece of debris on a beach near Mossel Bay, South Africa, that had an unmistakable partial logo of Rolls-Royce, the manufacturer of the missing aircraft's engines. The Malaysian Ministry of Transport acknowledged that the piece could be that of an engine cowling. An additional piece of possible debris, suggested to come from the interior of the aircraft, was found on the island of Rodriguez, Mauritius, in late March. On May 11, 2016, Australian authorities determined that the two pieces of debris were almost certainly from Flight 370. By October 2017, 20 pieces of debris believed to be from airplane had been recovered from beaches in the Western Indian Ocean. 18 of the items were identified as being very likely or almost certain to originate from MH370, while the other two were assessed as probably from the accident aircraft. On August 16, 2017, the ATSB released two reports. The analysis of satellite imagery collected on March 23, 2014, 2 weeks after MH370 disappeared, classifying 12 objects in the ocean as probably man-made. Two interim reports were issued in March 8, 2015 and March 2016. They contained factual information about the plane, but no analysis. The final report from the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, published on October 3, 2017, was 440 pages and called for planes to be equipped with more precise flight tracking technology. The final report from the Malaysian Ministry of Transport was 1,500 pages, released on July 30, 2018. It confirmed that the plane was manually turned around, taking it off its normal flight path just after 1 o'clock, either by the pilot or a third party, and that the plane was missing for 20 minutes before anyone was alerted. Following these accounts of air traffic control failings, the chairman of the Civil Aviation Authority of Malaysia, Azharuddin Abdul Rahman, resigned on July 31, 2018. The intensive and urgent search for flight recorders in early April 2014, due to the 30-day battery life of the underwater locator beacons attached to them, drew attention to their inherent limitations. The maximum distance from the underwater locator beacons at which the signal can be detected is normally 2,000 to 3,000 under favorable conditions. Even if the flight recorders are located, the cockpit voice recorder memory has a capacity to store only 2 hours of data, continuously recording over the oldest data. This storage capacity complies with regulations, which take account of the fact that it is usually only the data recordings from the last section of flight that are needed to determine the cause of an accident. However, the events that led to Flight 370 diverting from its course before disappearing took place more than 2 hours before the flight ended. Given these shortcomings and the importance of the data stored on flight recorders, Flight 370 has brought to attention new technologies that enable data streaming to the ground. In March 2016, the ICAO adopted several amendments to the Chicago Convention in order to address issues raised by the disappearance of Flight 370. These affected aircraft manufactured after 2020, requiring cockpit voice recorders to record at least 25 hours of data to ensure that all phases of a flight are recorded. Aircraft designs approved after 2020 must incorporate a means of recovering the flight recorders or the information contained on them before the recorders sink below the water. This provision is performance-based so that it can be accomplished by different techniques, such as streaming flight recorder data from a stricken aircraft, or using flight recorders that eject from the aircraft and float on the surface of the water. The new regulations do not require modifications to be made to existing aircraft. In January 2015, the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board cited Flight 370 when it issued 8 safety recommendations related to locating aircraft wreckage in remote or underwater locations, and repeated recommendations for a crash-protected cockpit image recorder and tamper-resistant flight recorders and transponders.